Okay, and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the Township of Douro-Dummer and phase number 2 of our budget process for our 2021 budget. We welcome everyone here, and I think everyone knows the drill. We are trying to hold these meetings the way we would in person, but because of COVID, of course, we are meeting by Zoom. So everyone knows what we go through. I'm going to take the roll to make sure that all members of council indeed are here. First of all, Deputy Mayor Moher. Good, Carl. Councillor Watt. Councillor Landsman. And Councillor Watson. Good, thank you. Okay, as we said, this is step number 2 in our process, and we are here tonight to listen, and members of council are urged, if you do have any questions that you'd like to proceed with further to investigate, then please email staff with the precise questions. They will have time to get them answered. And our next get together, when we can dig a little bit deeper, is on the 24th of March at 5 o'clock. And staff will be prepared to answer even more. And I think the way this process is going this year is extremely valuable. It's different than we've done in other years, and I think it's very, very effective. Okay, with us tonight is our new CAO, Alana Arthurs. Alana, and that'll be the last time I say our new CAO, if that's okay. Also, Martina Chade-Hartwig, our deputy clerk, is here. Martina, Fire Chief Chuck Peterson. Chuck, are you here? Chuck, there's a friendly hello. Jake Condon, our manager of public works, is here. Mike Mood, our assistant manager of Parks and Rec. Mike, I believe you're, yeah, I see a little caricature of you down there. That's good. Senior administrative assistant Vanessa Sweeting is also there to push our buttons. And our temporary treasurer, Paul Creamer, is here. And Paul, we owe you a debt of gratitude, and you've done a heck of a job in looking after the financial end of things here for us. And you are going to continue to see us through the budget. So welcome to step 2. And Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you to lead the way. And members of council are all ears. We'll hear the facts, and then we'll deal with it. So, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Great.
And Martina has a question.
Go ahead, Martina.
Mr. Mayor, just a reminder that we need to do the disclosure of pecuniary interest.
Okay, sorry, I neglected to say that. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
No.
You can shout out. Okay, no. Hearing none. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. We can start the slideshow there. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for attending tonight's meeting. We will be presenting the proposed 2021 operating budget for the Township of Douro-Dummer this evening. This is considered the public portion of the budget process as well. So thank you to anyone else who has signed on to YouTube and is watching virtually to this evening's meeting. The beginning part, we can move to the next slide. This kind of initial part of the presentation will be quite similar to last night's presentation. However, I do believe it helps set the stage for what we are discussing tonight, and what we are not discussing tonight. And also, if there are any members of the public who are watching and attending, whether live or at a future date, and they didn't watch last night's meeting, this will help give an overview of the budget as it's being presented in its entirety. So with that said, just like last night, I am going to hand it over to Martina first in a second to give a little introduction to the budget. She'll have some commentary on some of the challenges that the township faced in 2020 and we expect to continue to face in 2021. And then I will give a high-level overview of some of the numbers. And then at that point, I'm going to hand it off to each manager. And at that point, they will give a little overview of their service and the things that they do in their department. I thought that was going to be important for this evening's meeting. I know most of council knows, but sometimes the public can forget what is exactly included in that budget. And I thought it would be appropriate to make sure that we give that introduction and overview of the service of all the things that they do and all the things that are included in that budget as we're presenting. From there, they will give a summary of some of the major changes that are going on or some of the major challenges that they had with the 2021 budget. So with that introduction, I'll hand it over to Martina, our deputy clerk, to say a few words on to the next slide.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Council, for joining us today. As we talked about last night, the township of Douro-Dummer and all of the world had quite the scene on our hands with the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still ongoing. This pandemic has led to low revenues for the Parks and Recreation Department, our town hall, and front counter services, as many of our facilities had to close due to local and provincial health regulations. The pandemic has changed how the municipality conducts business and has forced the township to move to remote work and technological solutions to ensure that we could continue to hold council meetings and offer services to the public while also keeping the community safe and keeping our staff safe. 2020 also saw quite a lot of turnover in staff with retirements, departures, and internal transfers. Looking forward to 2021, we're continuing to experience the COVID-19 pandemic. This is leading to increased unpredictability in regards to funding, service delivery, and revenue generating. The budget that is before you is taking a different approach than our past budgets due to recommendations from the Service Delivery Review, along with feedback from council and the public. One of the changes that both council and the public will see is that staff allocations amongst each department were completed to reflect the current practices, and therefore most of the changes to the operating budget are due to allocation changes. No new staff are being proposed for 2021, but the budget does allow for the recruitment of positions that are currently vacant. The focus of staff in the preparation of the budget was to maintain the operating budget and focus on capital projects. This focus can be seen in the proposed 0.6% increase to the operating levy. And I'll turn it back to Paul so he can go over some initial numbers for us.
Thank you, Martina. We can move on to the next slide. So this is, the numbers that everyone wants to see. This is, at the end of the day, really the purpose of the budget, or one of the purposes of doing this whole budget process, is to determine how much levy do we need to fund everything that the township is going to do in the next calendar year. The other, purpose of this process is to review our business processes and to ensure that we're going to have enough money to carry out and meet the needs of the public. So with the budget that is being presented to council this evening, results in an overall increase of 4.7% to the levy. And how we get there is a 0.6% change to the operating levy. 5.4% of the increase comes from capital, and therefore we are increasing the total levy by 6%. However, there was some assessment growth within 2020 and moving into 2021, and that puts us, reduces the need or the impact on the existing residents to 4.7%. When we put that into perspective of the entire bill for a resident on a home, or in this case, the bottom table shows $100,000 of assessment. With education rates staying the same, and the county proposing a 2.2% increase, and our 4.7% increase, the overall impact to a resident's tax bill would be 2.9% without any further changes at this point in time. A quick note that's noted at the bottom of the slide there is if anyone from the public had picked up our package that we released this past Monday, that package showed a 7.4% change to the tax rate. However, we have removed a capital item, which was for brushing in the roads department, due to some new information that the manager of public works came across on Monday and even Tuesday. So with that, we can move on to the next slide. It's showing the previous slide in a little bit more detail and breaking out. So of that $43 that you will pay towards the township on, or the portion that you will pay towards the township. And what we can see that on $100 of property taxes, $30 goes towards the township for operating. Just under $13 goes towards the township for capital. Around $39 goes towards the county, and just under $18 goes towards education. And this evening, we are going to be talking about that $30 on every $100, or 30% of your property tax bill. We can move on to the next slide. And again, just breaking it down even further. So of our township budget this evening, we are discussing 70% of that budget related to operating. I did want to spend some time. So Martina noted a couple of these changes. However, before I hand it off to the other managers, there's some consistent changes across each department. And I didn't want each manager to have to say the same thing. So I felt it was prudent that I make some commentary here at the beginning of some changes across the board. And the first one is in regards to staffing costs. So in the tables that were provided, the operating tables, you will see some larger than normal increases and decreases between departments. What's important to note is that no additional staff have been added, but what we have done is we undertook a review of where some staff are allocated. So for example, there are positions that the cost of that position gets allocated out to multiple departments, whether it's 50-50, or I think we have one position that goes to 4 or even 5 different departments, because that position is supporting each department. This is common for townships our size. People are forced to wear different hats and to serve different departments. But in doing that review and changing some of those allocations, you will see decreases in costs in some departments because we've allocated less to certain departments, but you may also see increases to others. Largely any increases will relate to the previously approved cost of living adjustment of 0.95%. And the second point there, again, Martina addressed initially, but just to get into some more nuts and bolts of how it impacts the numbers. So we know that there are some vacancies within the organization currently, and we can make pretty good estimates of when some of those vacancies will go until, just based on knowing how long a typical recruitment process will take. So we took an exercise of determining what the savings are going to be from the major vacancies that we know of already today. And instead of reducing each individual budget by those savings, what we've done is done a transfer from working funds into the overall corporate fund for that amount. Now, what that does is next year, when we are at the full complement, we won't see the large fluctuations in those departmental budgets. So, for example, I'm trying to think of a good position, but if the position is vacant currently and will be vacant until April or May, and if we would have reduced that department's budget by that position for those 4 or 5 months, next year when we get back to a full complement, which is entirely the intention, it would show a large fluctuation. The transfer from reserve, what I'm already planning for is at the end of the year, any surplus funds, which would result from these salary gappings and vacancies, would be transferred into the reserve at the end of the year. So we would have, let's say, $100,000 in savings from these vacancies. That would be deemed to be the township surplus, and that would be transferred into a reserve. And we will still be doing that, but I am already planning, I'm offsetting that transfer at the beginning of this process by having a transfer from reserve, because we already can account for and plan for those vacancies. Another major change across all departments, this was in moving on to the third point, is that the 7.8% increase in insurance. I think even our new CAO commented to me yesterday that she learned that that's what the increase was, and that we're pretty fortunate to have only had 7.8%, because some of our surrounding municipalities, the impact was much greater than that. And this last point is important. We have included, I think the exact number here is $243,318 of grant funding from the provincial government that we have received and are going to receive related to the COVID Safe Start and COVID relief funds. And that is how we've been able to offset some of the additional costs that departments are going to experience, and we're expecting them to experience this year, related to COVID, whether it's due to additional cleaning. And then also the big one, and Mike Mood, our acting manager of Parks and Recreation, will explain later the amount of loss of revenue that we expect to experience from Parks and Recreation, and be due to the facilities being closed. So that wraps up that slide. I think we can move on to kind of the next section of the presentation this evening. And I'm trying to see, I'm going to go back to Martina to review our general government services.
Thanks. I'm actually going to defer to Alana for this first slide.
Okay.
Thank you, Martina, and thank you, Paul. Just a general overview of what's coming out of the CAO's department. The policy and program development, there are a number of policies and programs that need to be developed or updated, some resulting specifically from your service delivery review. And this will be ongoing throughout the year, as some are relatively simple and have very little cost impact, while others are a little more substantial. The human resources and performance management, there has been some transition, myself included. And while I settle in, we're already working to resolve some of the other gaps to ensure staff are not overwhelmed in their roles and we can perform effectively. This will be an ongoing initiative as we review the various roles and job descriptions. The economic and community development activities over the course of the year will continue to explore opportunities for economic development that fit well within our community and continue to support our community groups throughout the process. Develop programs and bring forward to council for approval. As we review the existing programs in place and see where amendments might be required, this will be brought forward to council for review and approval so that we can enhance the way we do business. Working with stakeholders and elected officials at various levels of government to advocate for the township and explore funding opportunities. As I myself become a little more familiar with the township and the financial requirements, continuing to build those relationships with other levels of government and working with the council and stakeholders will be essential so we can be aware and explore funding opportunities. The strategic plan, long and short-term goals, and a vision. The development of the strategic plan was actually one of the recommendations in the service delivery review. And although the timelines do not require that this be budgeted for in its entirety in 2021, we do intend to do some preliminary work, and we'll bring that back to council for review and potentially completion in 2022. And the implementation of the service delivery review and change management. The successful implementation of the service delivery review will be an ongoing project over the next 3 years at least. And there'll be a number of changes which will require a change management strategy, and we'll work as a team to realize those positive effects and the results of those recommendations. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if I can't, I will defer to Martina.
Okay, did we come to a grinding halt here?
Yeah, I see no questions.
That's perfect.
So the next slide there, I guess.
So I'm going to do an overview of the Clerks department, and then I'm actually going to move right into the planning services because I think they're quite interconnected, but that slide is further down in the presentation. So the Clerks department has quite a lot of responsibilities in the township. We're responsible for the preparation of all of the council agendas, committee agendas, minutes, correspondence, bylaws, and statutory public notices. We also act as a resource for council regarding meeting management, the procedural bylaw, and issues surrounding accountability, transparency, and governance. We act as the head for municipal freedom of information and protection of privacy compliance, and we respond to requests from stakeholders for information and to manage the township's record retention bylaw. We are also responsible for maintaining the township's policy manual and ensuring that it is up to date. We are also responsible for ensuring that all of the township's bylaws are adhered to, especially the records retention bylaw as mentioned earlier, and the related maintenance to correspondence and related material. We issue lottery licenses with assistance from the finance department. And of course, one of the biggest tasks we have is to run municipal elections and manage all of the administrative functions of the election process. Vanessa, if you could just skip to the planning slide. It's just after the Parks and Rec. There we go, thank you. So the planning department and the clerks department are very similar, as it's very similar staff who are doing these functions. The planning department processes zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, site plans, and it also comments on consent applications to the County of Peterborough. We conduct mandatory pre-consultation meetings with applicants and stakeholders for all major development activities. That can be a zoning bylaw amendment, minor variances, site plans, consents, and just general economic development activities. We also act as a first point of contact for the public regarding a wide range of planning matters, and we provide guidance on navigating the planning process. We work with a wide range of stakeholders, including the County of Peterborough, Curve Lake First Nations, Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, and others in regards to planning activities and economic development projects. We manage appeals to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, that was formerly known as the OMB. We prepare all the reports relating to planning matters for both the Committee of Adjustment and the Planning Committee. And we work with the county and other townships to complete the comprehensive official plan update project, which is currently ongoing. And we monitor provincial legislation for changes that will affect the township and our community at large. If you could go back to the General Government 2021 Budget Operating Overview. Perfect, thank you. So council and the public will note increases in budget for IT support and software. This is due to the increase of remote work that we are all using to manage the pandemic. Also, this budget increase is seen as well because instead of allocating our annual diamond upgrade to a capital project, we've turned that into an operating project. With the uncertainty of revenue streams from the front counter, there's been a reduction in budget for office supplies, and we've increased inventory control in the office and in other departments to ensure that the supplies we're ordering last longer and are more responsibly used. We've also noted some of the following changes that have arisen due to the recommendations of the Service Delivery Review. That's an increase in budget lines for both training and education, and new monies allocated to HR services, which Alana alluded to earlier. I'm happy to answer any questions for those two departments.
Okay, nobody?
I see none.
Go, keep motoring.
And I think we are trying to encourage questions and discussion at the next meeting, which, as a reminder to anyone tuning in, is March 24th at 5 p.m. I think that's where we can council will have the opportunity to have some debate or more in-depth discussion on any items that they wish to dig into.
Yeah, and we appreciate council's patience on this. I think everyone is adhering to that, and I think we'll get a lot more out of it by listening for now. That's great.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, just before we jump to Parks, Paul, did you want to review the Finance Department? I think it's one or two slides back.
I can.
There we go.
I think keep going, go down one more. There we go. So in finance, I'm pretty proud of the team that I came into. They do a lot and are across a wide range of responsibilities. The department is responsible for all the financial reporting and record keeping, all accounting entries and plans related to asset management, the creation and monitoring of the annual budget. So that involves working with the management team and putting it together and presenting it to council. And then more of the, call it routine tasks of accounts payable and payroll and administering the benefits. And then the next one would be managing the grant process of applications and all the reporting requirements. These seem to be getting larger and larger in terms of requirements for reporting each year. And they do take time to stay on top of everything and to fulfill all the requirements that each organization asks for. And they all seem to be a little bit different. So sometimes you get lost in those nuances, and it can take time to fill everything out that they need. And then lastly, it would be the collection and monitoring of all property taxes. and in the rare cases, they're the management of any tax sale processes. So with that said, I believe we can go down 2 slides, and it will be Parks and Recreation's turn, and that will be Mike Mood.
Hey guys, so I'm going to talk about the parks part of our department first. We manage and maintain all of our parks. We have various parks throughout the township. We also have 5 different play structures and 5 different outdoor sports fields. In all those areas, we cut over 30 acres of grass during the summer months. We also look after 5 kilometers of trails at the Robert Johnson Eco Trail. We manage all bookings of the sports fields and work with our user groups to improve access and programming, access to recreation and programming. We implement recommendations from our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we also work with the Don Parks Committee on improving parks in the neighborhood. Next slide. And then the recreation side of things, we maintain and manage the Douro Community Center, the Douro Rec Center, and the Warsaw Community Center. We action capital projects for all the recreation facilities. We manage all bookings of facilities and work with the user groups. We also implement recommendations with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as well there too. Next slide. As Paul alluded to earlier, our greatest challenge has been the inability to forecast our revenues for the 2021 season, just due to the provincial and local health unit restrictions and closures of our facilities. So as Paul had said earlier, we're forecasting right now about $215,000 less in revenue than last year. So considerably a lot less than other years. That's not to say that we can't make some of that up at some points. Costs that are considered variable have been adjusted to reflect the facility closures. For example, in the staffing side of things, when we were closed, we were able to reduce it at that point. But with the other additions in staffing for that the provincial and local regulations have made us do, we've had to increase it in the areas that we're actually open. There's some things that we couldn't reduce, things like insurance and stuff like that. But other than that, the cleaning has been also extra. And so it's been challenging for us to work through.
Thanks, Mike. So we can move on to the building department, and that will be Brian Fawcett.
Yep. So the building department and bylaw enforcement is responsible for the administration and enforcement of the Building Code Act and the related building bylaw. We interpret and enforce the zoning bylaw, the property standards bylaw, the yard bylaw, the noise bylaw, our development charges bylaw, and quite a number of other related bylaws. We also, primary function is to review construction plans in conformance with the Ontario Building Code and issue the related building permits. Then we conduct field inspections for those issued permits, and on an as-needed basis, conduct investigations under various bylaws, including the zoning bylaw, the property standards bylaw, and also the building bylaw. The other portion of our department is our sewage system department, or our septic department. We're responsible there for the administration and enforcement of the Building Code Act, particularly Part 8, in relation to the building code for the installation and repair of sewage systems. We administer and carry out the township septic reinspection program, which started last year and will carry on for the next 9 years before we re-review that. And we also complete all the reporting that's required regarding sewage systems within the township. So while 2020 did bring on a myriad of challenges, as our other staff have commented so far, So far in 2021, we've seen an increase in volume, and that will likely continue to see an increase in volume throughout the rest of the year. There are a significant number of large residential projects that were postponed from last year, and those are moving ahead so far this year. They've already started in numerous cases. And there's a number of other projects that I'm aware of, as well as some limited commercial development on the horizon pending planning and site plan control. Our 2021 budget doesn't have any significant changes from 2020, and the legal fund that was allocated in 2020 was not spent. So that's been brought over to 2021, as we may see the courts resume one of our major civil court cases. The allocation of expenses between the building department and septic department are also better clarified in this year's budget. So the two departments, when compared in conjunction to the 2020 budget, will note that there's no significant increase in anticipated operating expenses. And the projection for 2021 is that the building department and septic department will continue to operate on full cost recovery. And for the benefit of anyone watching that doesn't quite understand that, is basically that the building and septic departments operate on permit revenue as opposed to tax revenue. So when we operate, we set our permit fees in accordance with our budget, and we aim every year to achieve full cost recovery so that the building permits and septic permits pay for the cost of administering those services.
Thank you, Brian. That is a really important point for your areas, that there is zero levy impact from the building department and the levy or in the septic services. So with that said, next up is Chuck Peterson, our fire chief, to discuss fire services.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm not going to read my slides, but I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're about and who we are. So we're a volunteer fire department with 60 plus volunteers working at 4 fire stations, utilizing 13 fire apparatus, 3 boats, and 1 all-terrain vehicle. We have automatic aid agreements that we provide that provide us initial response from Havelock, Belmont, Mattoon, Hospital, Norwood, and Selwyn. As we also provide initial response for Havelock, Belmont, Mattoon, Botany South, Monaghan, and Selwyn. If you want to go to the next slide. So through our establishing and regulating bylaw, we strive to deliver the 25 initiatives from 5 divisions that are approved level of service that are found in our H&R bylaw. If we do the next slide to our budget. So our 2021 budget, we found there's some ups and downs, and I'll just highlight them now for you. Our training budget is making up for some lost courses from 2020 that were unavailable due to the pandemic, plus initial courses that will be available locally due to the fire college closure. And we anticipate this to be a 1-year spike in expense, just because of the situation that we are in and the new positions that we had through our new establishing and regulating bylaw to get those officers trained to the level that we expect them to. We have a small decrease in heat expense, but it all adds up, and it's kudos to our Station 5 renovation for being much more efficient, and the switching from an very old oil furnace to natural gas in Donwood. Our licensing 2020, I'll just make a note that if you're looking at the actual numbers for 2020, the numbers are a little bit skewed. We didn't spend as much money, but we anticipate that we will be this year, and that was because of the timing of recertification of our existing self-contained breathing apparatus that is should be arriving tomorrow, and as well as our extrication tools. So that certification and licensing should come back online, but just as a note, if you're comparing actuals. Our personal protective equipment and clothing increased due to extra protection for response. We have quite a few expiring gloves, boots, and balaclavas this year as well. And then the increase in medical masks and the hopeful arrival of our N95s that we've been patiently waiting for a year now should finally be arriving shortly. So we had to buy some case quantity to get those. And that's kind of the highlights for us.
Thanks, Chuck. And we have one last area to review, and that is transportation services or public works. And Jake Condon will be discussing.
Thanks, Paul. the Public Works Department is responsible for the maintenance of approximately 280 kilometers of municipal roads. This doubles to approximately 560 kilometers during winter maintenance activities. Some of the maintenance activities include grading, brushing, culvert maintenance, signage replacement, as well as patching. The Public Works Department completes capital projects, including reconstructing some of our roads, building some new roads, the application of gravel or surface treatment to the current road system. The department also manages the Halls Glen Transfer Station, as well as the waste collections contract for curbside collection, and also monitors the closed landfill sites. We maintain a large fleet of trucks, graders, and other road building machinery, and the Public Works Department controls and cares for the largest amount of township assets. Next slide. These first two items I just wanted to touch on with COVID and the pandemic. These items were pushed back, delayed in getting them into service, I guess you could say. So we should see in 2021 some staff time reduced documenting some of these winter and routine patrols, our sign installations, our culvert installations, our day-to-day kind of activities that we have to document. We should see staff time reduced in these areas. And as well, the GPS is installed on all of our equipment and vehicles, which we will see benefits with that as well. For 2021, we're focusing more on maintenance while still moving forward with capital projects on a smaller scale. We are replacing a number of failed signage that was noted during the sign inspection in 2020. We're going to continue our frequent grading. Staff is noting large benefits to this approach, and think it's wise to continue with this. We're also increasing our brushing, our roadside grass mowing. These benefit the road conditions immensely come springtime, mostly when the road is moist and wet. It gives them a chance to dry out a lot quicker. And the last item, the calcium application. Over the last few years, we've receiving very dry, hot weather during the summer months, and it's prolonging the dusty road conditions, and this should help with that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for all your hard work on this presentation and the budget today. And thank you, Council, for your time. If there are any pressing questions on process or high-level questions, we can take them now. If they're specific to the budget, we will be receiving all emails, and I'm kind of calling next week's meeting the council deliberation meeting, and I think that'll be an effective way, and it'll be an orderly way to address all questions.
Yeah, great, Paul. I think this is a great way of doing things. We can hear the 10,000 foot look at the budget and give us time to think of questions we'd like to ask and send them in. And I think this is a great way of doing it. So thank you for that. Are there any simple questions of clarity that somebody didn't understand? That's fine for now. Carl, go ahead.
Just a quick clarity question. On many of the Excel sheets, it shows the 2020 forecast, or I assume it's a forecast, and the 2021. Is the 20 a forecast, or is that actuals to date for 20?
2020 was the budget. Now, it is important to note that on some columns, there have been some changes in terms of what is considered capital and what in terms is presented as operating. I have done my best to separate out in the previous year's budget the capital and operating expenses. In some places it wasn't necessarily clear, and that could account for some of the swings that in this year's budget it's being presented in capital or it's being presented in operating.
So the secondary question to that we will need an answer to is, if that's forecast, what were the 2020 actuals if there were some bottom line numbers there available to us next week?
Sure, I can provide some actuals. I will give a little bit of a caveat that they're not anywhere near final. There's probably, I would have liked to do a lot more work on cleaning up on how those would be presented and how they will be appearing. So they will not be complete.
That's
They
okay.
will give you an idea on, I think, some of your more standard operating categories, wages and salaries and those items, but some of your more transfers to and from reserves and some of the grant items, the accounting entries just have not been done for them to be showing how they should for 2020 actuals.
No problem.
Stable.
Good.
So just a heads up.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Carl. Go ahead, Sheila.
Well, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Paul, I guess. I was, just so I'm clear, you're saying the 2020 figures are the 2020 budget? I was under the impression that they were the 2020 actuals that did not have a year-end adjustments made to them. So
what is being shown is the 2020 budget.
Oh, well, then I would add to Deputy Mayor Moher's question, is there any chance of getting any sort of 2020 figures for next week?
As the managers were reporting, I was completing that request because I have made everything into a nice little model that I can create reports fairly easily now. I just printed to PDF and I will be able to share. Hopefully, I might review it a little bit before I send it out, but over the weekend at the latest, if not tomorrow.
Thank you.
That question's answered. Okay, I'm seeing no other hands. Alana and or Martina, are there any closing comments maybe you'd like to make? I'm very impressed with this process. Alana, go ahead.
I would just reiterate, as I did last night, thank you to Paul and Martina and definitely the rest of the staff for pulling this together. It's made my first week pretty painless, so I appreciate all of your support.
That's great. Thank you. Martina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any further comments or questions. I just remind the public, if they would like to be a delegate, to please contact me so I can add them to the list.
Yeah, I'm just going to say there'll be plenty of opportunity for the public to make comments, to ask questions, to do all those kinds of things as we move through the process. So we will be getting together again on the 24th and we'll dig even deeper. So please get your questions in via email and we'll try to move forward. Okay, that is going to be it then. Paul, thank you very much again for making things so clear, and this is a great system to have. So thank you everyone for joining us, whether you were watching live on YouTube or the recorded version. Our 2021 budget is a work in progress, and we will continue that road to get it finalized. Could I have a motion, please, to adjourn this meeting? Sheila and Heather, all in favor? All opposed? That motion is approved. Thank you all very much, and good night, everyone. Please stay safe. We will get through this. Thank you.
Night.